All right, go live. Okay, hey everybody, we are live with Alex Thompson here. Welcome, Alex. Thank you for joining us. Uh,
Thank you,
yes, absolutely. So Alex is a dear friend, and I must admit a marvelous climbing partner. So,
Oh,
but he is a fantastic filmmaker, film director as well. So. I think a lot of you probably have seen at this point St. Francis, which was your first feature film. Is that right, Alex?
yeah, yeah,
Which had a really great run and a lot of buzz through the awards circuits in the 2020 season. Is that correct? You just won the audience award for South by Southwest and everything like that. But then you're
yeah.
also just finishing up post on a thriller,
Rounding, yeah, rounding,
Rounding.
yeah.
Anything we need to know about that? What's the outlook for the like release dates and everything for that?
I mean, it's so far it's a great outlook. It's a lot of all possibilities. So
Not like how's it going to turn out, but
yeah, yeah.
when do we get to see it?
I think I would guess in the next 6 months. I would
Awesome.
guess,
Very
yeah.
cool. And then you're in pre-production for a third film already too. Is that correct?
Yes, unofficially. So we're
Oh,
sort of we're chugging. The engine has started chugging, so which is really exciting.
very cool. Very cool.
Yeah.
So I've known Alex for a good bit, and he's always really struck me as, um, I just always just am inspired by watching you work, and I've always thought of you as a student of film, not just a director of film, but a student of film, and I mean that always in the best of way. I think um, a lot of people go through their artistic learning process as a student in film school or as an acting student, hoping to one day graduate from that and become a real actor or a real director.
Right.
But I've always seen you as somebody who will be a lifelong student, and I think that's what makes you such a powerful director on some levels. But can you give us a reasonably brief background on how you got into all of this? From
Yeah, yeah. I mean, so when I was like 8 years old, 8 or 9 years old, think this is like Osama bin Laden pre 9/11. This is when he was putting anthrax in envelopes and sending them to this is that era. And my dad like handed me and my cousins, my Michigan cousins, Cam, Mac, and Ian, and my siblings, like a VHS camera, not mini DV. So this is pre mini DV. It's like actually like the VHS chunky tapes, and we made a movie to like get out of everybody's hair during Thanksgiving in like 1999, I think. And
my gosh.
it was the first time I grew up watching like really I say like Humphrey Bogart movies, and it was almost exclusively like my grandfather truly would say like disparaging things about films shot in color. That's how like that's how like orthodox my film experience was. But he was a Greek immigrant, and so for some reason there was something sort of magical and alchemical about like the way that this Greek immigrant who became an English teacher would consume these like American stories and these film stories. So I just like I think he was always so passionate about it, and I just always knew like, oh, I want to make those things, and I love telling stories. I loved like projects, and so that led to like every single, you know, from 1998 onward, every like who is Alexander? Who is Alexander in elementary school? Well, he will be making a new film this summer. Who's Alexander in middle school? Like his next remake of The Great Turkey Escape will be released on DVD. All that sort of bullshit, but also ambition was like baked in from very early. So it was sort of like a foregone conclusion. But to what you were saying about learning, when you start that young thinking you're going to be a director, you learn pretty quickly that like you don't know what that even means. And so
Yeah.
either you wait until you fully understand what being a director means, or you go out and do it to the best of your ability over and over and over again.
Sure.
And that's kind of what I did. I started out as a PA and a casting assistant in LA, ended up getting a gig working on a small film called Warren that had like Gene Smart and John Hurd in it, that shot in Chicago. Um, and I think that's where I met like Rich Kotofsky and like Larry Newman. I think I'm probably misstating it. A ton of Chicago people in that movie. And you're like, immediately I felt this sense of community in Chicago. And I had always done theater. So it was like, I was very lonely in LA and I didn't know many people in New York. And so after I'd made my first short film, it made sense to come to Chicago because it felt like, you know, similar to my undergrad experience, it felt like a sandbox kind of where, you know, if you kind of set your mind to it, you could figure a lot of stuff out with a pretty high safety net. You know, you can pay rent, you can engage with art, you know, you can do all these things and still like feed yourself.
Yeah.
And yeah, so that's it.
I, I've I've had a chance to see a little bit of the rounding too, and I'm just
Yeah.
I'm blown away how you really take, and it's not all Chicago actors, but you really take Chicago actors and just show, look, we can make a really, really, really powerful film with the incredible talent that's in this town. So I think that's really, really, really cool. Um, have you ever done anything in black and white? Just out of curiosity, coming off of Grandfather.
I think I would say my earliest films in the 90s were necessarily black and white, I think,
Yeah.
but not on purpose.
Awesome. So we've got a bunch of actors on the live stream, I'm sure, and I'm sure since that's the case, everyone wants to know, how do we get in your films? But what is your casting process nowadays, currently?
Yeah. Well, it was kind of amazing. I mean, St. Francis and Rounding, almost every single role was an offer. No kidding. Like the guy in St. Francis who plays the librarian who says no running, it was a guy named Bill Drain who was in my a class I was teaching for Carol Debo up in Wilmette. And I just like really liked Bill.
I rewound the film after his line to see who that was, because he was on there just for like this glimpse, and I was like, who is that?
Yeah, like Kathy Rule in the waiting room, you know, with the Harry Potter spoiler, you know,
Yeah.
every single one of those roles was somebody that Kelly or I knew their work, loved them personally,
Hmm.
and just wanted to work with. Like Chadine and Lily, I knew Lily from, God, I don't even know, from maybe we definitely been on set together. That's the funny thing is when you like are a PA in Chicago
Sure.
on like one TV show, you meet like half of the actors in Chicago because if it runs for a season, it's like 4 guest stars an episode,
Yeah.
8 days a week, or it feels like 8 days a week,
Right.
6 days a week. But same thing on Rounding where like, you know, you get a lot of, I just like love actors so much. And when I love actors, I love like Brad Smith, Max Lipschitz. You know, these were folks that I knew socially before I knew them in the context of my work. Like Brad, I'd seen Brad in films. I'd seen Brad as an actor on stage. I'd made music videos for Brad, but Brad was never in them. Or actually, there's one that he's in. It's pretty good. But he's very good in it. But
Oh, so funny.
he's so good. But you know, but you're always thinking. For me, I'm always thinking like, I've got to get Brad in this. I got to put Brad in this movie. You know, like Austin Pendleton is somebody who was in like all the films I produced before St. Francis
Sure.
and one short film. Austin was somebody who, I don't know, you sort of stop when you meet an actor who's so great. You just sort of stop like dreaming and start seeing it's in reality now. You're like, I've got this person who I love. Like, why not? You know,
Yeah.
Max. I'd seen Max perform sketch comedy like in the underground. Chicago's like got a great like underground comedy scene. Maybe he's not even underground, but he's certainly amazing. But I saw him more often as a waiter at Reno in Logan Square, where I would get breakfast every day. So
I
you
was just
just
talking.
keep this database. Yeah.
I was just talking to Alex right before we started this thing, and I said, "You're gonna make a star out of that guy for sure. He's so funny. He's
Oh
just
my God. I mean, the best actors, they're like, you see them and you're like, oh, they are a star. You know, like
yeah.
you mentioned Larry Newman
I know he'll make
Jr.
a star out of himself. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
Larry is like you see Larry in an audition and you're like, that guy is a star.
He's so such a great
Yeah.
person.
Yeah.
Awesome.
He's amazing.
Um, so, but you have used worked with PR casting, right?
Yes, yeah. So extensively worked with PR casting. Like they were huge, like a huge support network for King Rat and Our Father when I was producing. And
Okay.
like that database of actors and like the people that we saw in that process was like staggering. And
Right.
then for St. Francis, they were integral in casting Ramona. I mean, like they basically had this wild search that was always sort of precipitated by AJ saying like, I have this one actor who I think you're really going to like. I think you're really going to like her. And we heard about her in that context, like kind of throughout the week that we were seeing folks, or the few weeks we were seeing folks. And they were so right. I mean, they're like the best
Yeah. So
people I've ever worked with.
she was Chicago.
Yeah,
She was.
yeah. She's in Joliet. Yeah.
That's. I mean, yeah. She's like. How do you find somebody like that? That's
Yeah, yeah. Mickey and Jennifer and AJ like consistently like on rounding, I feel like they saved me because I was ready to cast the film by myself
right.
in December. I remember Mickey emailed me on Christmas Eve last year and was like, I'd love to do this. Like I haven't cast something in like ages. Like, yes, sign me up. And I think I cried because immediately they sent me a list of like 10 actors for every role. And it like they blew my mind and redefined these characters.
Sure.
Folks that I'd never seen work before, like Edwin Gibson and Cruz and I mean, really everybody in that cast was like just blew me away. And they had so much attention to detail. I don't know. They like good casting directors like teach you how to love actors.
Yeah.
I'm
Well, and
rambling.
staying open. Well, yeah. I have a question that I'll talk about later about like opening up and letting go and then seeing what other people's visions are in the creative process. I think is a huge part of how you can approach your job, which is great. Um,
Totally.
I think there are a lot of actors out there that go through the short film. They do short films. They work with independent film directors, and I think it's the dream of a lot of people to have that director that they've been working with, take the steps that you've taken as well. So it's cool to hear that you have worked with some of those same folks back on some of your shorter stuff as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, so many of the actors that I work with have also shown up for stuff that like thankless stuff. Like, hey, Lily, will you come read this
Right.
the thriller that isn't getting made, this year.
Right.
Will you come read this thriller for me? I'll bring pizza. And like Keith Kupfer, will you show up and do this thing for me? And
Yeah.
I don't know. There's a lot of ways to build those relationships I found, especially in Chicago, where people are so generous.
Yeah. And as you go forward, do you see any um, road bumps in the way of like, we have to go to, some LA names, we have to bring on some bigger names, or like, how do you see the future
You
panning out
know,
as things start growing?
less so with like LA names. I
Yeah.
think if you come in and you're like, I know these roles are these people,
Hmm.
I think there are very few actors that can actually help your movie's chances of being fiscally.
Yeah.
That's kind of a myth, It's like there's literally like 10 people who could actually help.
Yeah.
Um,
Brad
but
Pitt.
I think there is some pressure. Like George Clooney would be great, but but in most cases, Keith Cuffer is going to be better. I don't know.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
I
Cool.
think people get it. Yeah, yeah.
So I want to talk about being a student of film. So if you are, and just having watched some of the ways that you work and having talked to you about some of the process that you've been through, um, how would you say you study as a director?
Well, I mean, I love watching movies. I love seeing theater. I loved seeing theater. Actually, I currently love seeing theater. I have seen a few shows recently, but um, I think that I try not to dismiss any work that feels like it was made with intention. I think for me, that's key is like, when you're unpacking whatever, the Maltese Falcon or an Agnes Varda film, all you're doing is assuming intent. It's the same thing that we do in a workshop for a play or in a rehearsal for a play. We assume authorial intent. And what you get to do with a film is you get to assume intent, and then you can sort of determine, was the intent successful, you
Sure.
know? And I find it really fun to be like, to say like, oh, I love, like there's a shot in Rounding that is just a direct lift from Marathon Man. It was the only shot I liked in Marathon Man. But when I saw it I was watching with Nate, I was like, oh man, I'm glad we watched this movie. So the first thing you do is you register like, oh, I like that. And then in recreating it, you're like, well, why do I like that? What is this accomplishing for me, for my story?
Yeah.
There's a film called Coming Home that I love with Jane Fonda and John Voight, and the camera is never on eyeline with them until the very end of the film. It's all profile shots, and I didn't realize it until the ending hit me so hard. I was like, wow, these people are really connecting. And then I was like, we got to rewatch that. And so now I use that. I mean, that's if you take an acting class with me, that's literally like, or a directing class. It's like my only lesson is eyeline.
Yeah.
Because it hit me so hard. But I wouldn't have known that if I hadn't been curious and kind of open to, what people are making choices like 100 times a day on a film set. So like you're bound to be able to pick them out, just like you can pick out a brushstroke on a painting.
Yeah.
So that's how I do it. And I look way back and I look at everything new, and it's a very young art form, very young.
So moving from St. Francis into a thriller, did you have any particular moments, like when you pulled something from Marathon Man? Was that a particular moment in your film that you're like, I want to play around with some creative ideas here. Let me grab this movie, and like just start watching stuff, or do you just remember stuff from things that you've already gone through?
Well, it's like there's like you always want to find a place for like the cut that you loved in Lawrence of Arabia, or the bank robbery scene in Out of Sight, or
List like, okay, we can use that finally. Yeah.
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 There's stuff that you find that you've been talking about over and over again through the years and trying to shove in places where it didn't belong. I think with St. Francis, we had an opportunity to do a few things creatively with the camera.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm glad that we didn't have more of an opportunity, because I think it would have overwhelmed the naturalism of that story.
Absolutely.
So it was like, we got the hell out of the way of that. And I'm so glad that Nate and I did, because that story succeeds on the merits of Kelly and her script and the ensemble. Yeah. With Rounding, we got to be in this dance with Namir, who is acting his heart out, sort of slowly losing the thread. And so our camera got to like compound that, yeah, or, pull back and emphasize it. So it just meant that we got the opportunity to do even more. And so any scene is sort of an opportunity to do something. Yeah.
So I mentioned this just a bit before when I was talking about the casting process and like letting go of it and having that input from the folks over at PR Casting or wherever you're using
Yeah.
to really wash over you and inspire new ideas for the film itself. You wrote in a recent article. Alex is a marvelous writer too. He's got some articles out there that is fantastic on talkhouse.com. An article about eating disorder, relationship with an eating disorder, and how an eating disorder can instill some unhealthy control issues in a person, and that as a good filmmaker particularly on St. Francis, you found that you were in such a position where the requirements of the job came full on and you had to take on the aspect of directing, which is you step
Control.
on set, you let go. You let
Right.
go,
Right.
otherwise you lose the opportunity to find those magical moments if you control too
Yeah.
much. So if we're a student of film and we've got a list of shots ready to go and we have ideas coming into things, which is, crucial, how do you find that that comes to play in your work, that moment of letting go and just exploring with the artists in the moment?
Well, intention is different than control. So I think
Yeah.
when I go into PR, which is a distant memory, right? But like when I see Mickey and Jennifer interacting with actors and actors leave the room and they turn to me and they have these impressions, they're looking for truth just the same as I am. They're looking for those moments of discovery just the same as I am.
Yeah.
I think that what I realized was I could be I could try to be like the David Fincher or the Orson Welles or the, Catherine Bigelow, who have everything sort of choreographed within an inch of its life. Um, Shooting with 6 cameras, maybe that actually is on the other side of things. But what I realized was that if you don't have the resources to do that, if you don't have the time, if you don't have the takes, actually what everybody can see has value is discovery. And so if you're willing to leave room for discovery, then you're swimming in a pool that everybody can get into. You're
Yeah.
everyone's welcome to that party, to extend the metaphor in
Right.
that direction. But it's like it really is like I think I can dial in the camera, I can dial in, the location, I can choose color schemes. But at the end of the day, if the performance doesn't feel real and alive, then the scene doesn't feel real or alive.
Yeah.
The edit can help that. It can create context and momentum. But you want to be able to call cut and feel like you got something intangible.
Right.
And that only comes from limitations and letting go.
Yeah. And as actors, that's always the gold standard, or that thing that we always strive for, is that freedom and release in performance and that just pure exploration. But at the same time, that intention or that student of acting is part of the equation as well. And so I think we oftentimes just say, just as an actor, you just act. But
Right.
nobody would be like, well, how do you direct? Well, you just direct. That doesn't fly that way. But as an
Yeah,
actor,
yeah.
oftentimes you're just like, just let go and be present. You can't just be
Yeah.
present as an actor. When working with actors, I suppose this is a double question. What inspires you about, or what do you find intriguing about an actor, and how do you see them as students of acting? What do you see actors studying? And this is yes, this is from an acting school. I'm not at all take acting classes. I don't even want to hear that come out of your mouth. I want to hear, watch this thing, or what do they do in the moment that might be happening
Yeah,
before
yeah.
the show?
Well, I love actors best on set. I love talking about the character. I love talking about the script. I love table work, but I love when an actor walks on set and they have a perspective, or they have they have an energy or a desire as an actor or as a character, and they seem curious, about it. One of my favorite moments on the set of Rounding was because it was COVID pre-vaccine, every new person that got introduced, there was it was a sort of kerfuffle, every new person sort of introduced new complications. But it was also exactly how it always has been, which is a new actor comes to the set and it's a new dynamic,
Yeah.
And so, right, Michael Potts shows up and it's a totally different dynamic than it was just Namir running through the snow. Michael is incredibly astute with sort of, he knows when he feels like he's got it, or he knows when he feels like he needs another take. And so he would often, and he knows that my impulse is to give direction when maybe I should just shut the hell up. And so occasionally he would either break or we'd cut, and he would literally hold up his hand and be like, let's just go again. Like, let's just do this one more time. Like, I know you want to say something, but this is what I need. And what was so cool is I saw Namir doing that a few times after that, because they have all these scenes together. And it was really cool to see like actors in a scene, like Hannah Dworkin in a scene with Brad. And because it is one shot spinning around a room,
Right.
It's not piecey piece. Like, everybody's in this soup together. And so everyone has to feel real with each other, because, they don't have lines. They're making them all up. Or they were given them by a physician's assistant or a resident who's helping out with the shoot. So I love, like, I don't know. I think I love, even if an actor is like, I saw this Al Pacino movie and I love this thing that they do, and so I'm going to do this thing. It doesn't have to come from a place of like deep truth to translate. All you do is, if you walk on set and you've got some flag to fly, then I have something to play with. And I can always say, like, pull that flag down for a second. Like, let me get one take where you're you.
Right. But that flag can still inspire ideas that you, yeah. I always tell actors so much that they don't realize, having been in the casting office all the time, most of the ideas that I would throw to actors, I would say, you don't understand exactly how this works, but this idea is coming from you. Like, you're giving me this idea. So it's not even a suggestion from me necessarily. It's a director directing from me. It's truly coming from you. It's just bouncing back at you.
Yeah.
At times, if you're brave enough to fly some flag that might be the wrong one to fly in that moment, even.
Yeah.
Throw that new idea out. That's cool. So we've talked a long time already. Quickly, what if you had some advice to somebody starting out in their acting career or building their acting career right now? You've seen quite a bit. What would some thoughts be?
I think, honestly, I think every opportunity is like an opportunity to do something different or try something new. That, I always watch these, I watch a lot of movie trailers, which is honestly the closest to like an addiction that I have. I don't think it's good for me. I don't really like it, but I like literally watch every movie trailer, and it doesn't feel good, but I do it. And I always watch these like horror movie trailers, and I see all these actors, and then I'm like, God, they really had to like pretend, they really had to think this film could be the next Hereditary or the next whatever. I've got to like do my best acting. I have to like find the truth in this, on this set and this scene, because who the hell knows? Like, these producers are probably assholes. The director might be terrible, but like it could turn out,
Yeah.
So like, I think you get on a set, you get on any set, and just it's just got to be about the work itself, that you're doing that day, on that moment. Because then and I feel the same way as a director, because then you don't go home thinking like, all right, well, what's okay, I did that, but what's gonna actually get me to my career dream? Because I just think to me, the end is perseverance is the key, I think, but but it's not the answer. Like the answer is the things you're doing now. It's like the work you're doing now. That's what's important. It shouldn't be about the end of the road, you know. Um,
Very cool.
yeah, I'm anxious to do more movies, but I'm excited about the thing I'm doing right now, if that
Right.
makes sense.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So,
Sorry for being.
so we've got Alex is bumping into a meeting with some of the folks in the practice in just a little bit. So I want to open it up to questions. If anybody's on the YouTube feed, which will be about 20 seconds after I ask this question, so we'll stand here and stare at each other for a moment. But if anybody has any questions on there, throw them in the YouTube chat, and I can see if we can answer any of that. And then for those of you who are on in the practice, we will bump over into a meeting very shortly thereafter. So do hang on to the Zoom meeting, the folks of you that are actually on the Zoom meeting. Cool. So I don't know how to. This is my first YouTube experience, so I don't know how to tell when I've actually asked the question on YouTube. I should like have a signal to myself where I like pull my ear or something. Be like, that's where the question dropped. So we
Do you,
might not have any questions out there.
do you feel like it's going well?
I think this is going great, Alex. You look fantastic, and
Yeah,
this
you
is
look
going really well.
fantastic.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, yeah.
We can talk about climbing while we wait for this. All right, so it doesn't look
Oh
like there's any
man.
questions out there on the YouTube viewing machine. So everybody who's out there on YouTube right now, thanks for watching. And we are going to start more regularly putting some webinars out again because we've gotten some many requests. And oh wait, there's one question. There's one question I will throw out there. Anna Yee asks, you mentioned star quality. Can you
Hmm.
pinpoint something that someone does or has to have star quality, in your opinion? Ooh, that's a tough one.
Yeah.
But you have
I
to deal
think it's to me it like exists right here, like right in front of the eyes, and it's this it's basically charisma, but it doesn't have to be loud or gregarious at all. I think when somebody, I don't know, star quality is so the wrong word, and I shouldn't have used that phrase, but I like the question because I think what it is it's folks who feel like they are keeping something to themselves, but we know they're keeping something to themselves. And so I think we have there's this energy that exists right outside the eyes that I think like reaches through the camera and ends up hitting people in a way that feels, you
Sure.
know, exciting. And again, I think that there's a huge range of folks who have that. And sometimes it's just a matter of people being comfortable.
When I was watching, gosh, it might even been both the movies because it struck me how strong all the performances were. And one thing that I saw in all the people that you were putting up there was, even if their character was a living mess,
Mhm.
and not put together, the actor themselves were very grounded in allowing that presence to be there. They weren't struggling after it. They weren't. There's just something physically that actor was just fully in that space that let us.
Yeah,
I almost. It was a film where I really didn't pay attention to acting that much at all. I just
it's
watched the
great.
story, which I think is always a great testament to the people that are on screen doing the work. So
Well,
yeah, they were all a star in my book on that.
something I always say that I think sometimes bothers the screenwriter and me at least is like I think that when we think of a great performance, it's actually not like the delivery of a specific word or a specific line. It's actually not about delivery at all. It's somebody's ability to seem real
Yeah,
and compelling, but compelling really does start with being real. um even if you look at Jim Carrey, like his most compelling performances are deeply disturbing, and I think that's why we
Yeah.
find them so compelling.
Yeah.
He's
Absolutely.
not just like a plastic person up there. He's got some sadness and some struggle. So
Yeah.
yeah.
So I do. We'll take just a little bit more time here before we jump into the practice meeting. This one I think can be a life question as well. But as a writer, when do you know that your script is done? I.e., how
Ah,
do you stop tweaking every other word?
I like making movies because I never have to think about that. It's done. It's never done. The script is, there's this that you all will know this. You'll be the first person to know this. I think I filmed an early draft of Rounding when we shot the movie. I think I accidentally shot an early draft. So I spent months tweaking, and I don't think I think I shot an early draft.
Oh my
It
gosh.
was it was 4 pages difference. I don't know,
Saved you four
but
pages or cost you 4 pages of money?
saved me,
That's good.
saved me. But I really I think that I like to do table reads. I like to get people up on their feet. I like to hear people talk about it. Have a little bit of that like process that you know is the, sort of sorry some crunchy noises outside my apartment
You're
door.
good.
I like to have that kind of process because I think as a writer, you're just too close to it. And so you've got to hear it in a different way. Even if you like record the whole reading, you know, and
Yeah.
then play it on your iPhone across the room and then listen to what feels false, I don't know. I've never done that, but I think that would be, I think it'd be useful. But the short answer is it's like it's done when after you film that scene, it's done. That's it. And then you get to rewrite it in the editing room to some extent, but not really.
And I
You
think
kind of have what you have.
as a pursuit of any creative endeavor, I think you could almost translate that question to be like, when are you ready? Or when
Right.
is it ready? And the answer is you're never ready. But if
Yeah.
that makes you not do something, that's the one thing you got to take out of your way. You're never
Yeah.
gonna be ready. Awesome.
Which is why, I mean, that's what structure is good for.
Yeah.
If you know that you have a satisfying structure, then then there's room for discovery. And that's why discovery is great, is because if you know that you've cast the right actors, shot listed the film, done all the things that you feel like you should do, memorized your lines, then you can show up to set and say, I've done all that I can do.
Yeah.
And I'm going to try my damnedest to discover something.
Awesome. Very
Yeah.
good. Well, I've taken us way past the time here. So thank you, everybody who's joined us on YouTube. We'll bring another one of these back very soon. And keep in touch. Awesome.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Don.
Sean.
And you
Thanks,
can take a
you
tiny
too.
break if you want to, and we'll be back with the practice folks in just a minute. Cool. Thanks, everybody.